All right. Welcome everyone. Jamin Chively, co-founder and president of Radish.org. We're pioneering radical collective intelligence as a specific form of the broader topic of collective superintelligence, which any way you slice it is massively emergent right now, especially considering that everyone's at home. We're all basically part of this matrix, right? This involuntary matrix. And so we're all plugged into Zoom conferences, for dozens of hours per week, connecting with all kinds of incredible people like we're doing right now. So
we know that.
Anyway, and so where I'm going with that is that we now have the raw materials for collective superintelligence. And what's missing is simply getting all of these conversations that are ongoing, hyper-connected in real time. So that exactly what you've orchestrated here, David, could really be happening in mass as we play this planetary game of musical chairs, optimally finding that trajectory of conversations that really rounds it out for us. With that, I'll go on mute and love to hear other people's thoughts on collective superintelligence.
So I think that's all where many people want to go. And what, before you go on mute, what would be your challenge in doing that? Let's take it for granted we want to do that. Let's say in a year's time, we want 10 million people in a global conversation in real time like this. What is the question that you are struggling with, or the thing you really need solved, added to in this conversation, that would help address a path from here to there?
Beautiful, beautiful. So my question and challenge is that we can have this way sooner than 1 year from now, probably maybe in the order of a month from now, and we actually need it with that level of urgency. And to that end, for example, one of the things we do every week is we hold a 24-hour collective intelligence block party, which is this open space where anyone can come and participate in a conversation about precisely this. What is it that's holding us back? What do we need to assemble? What do we need to put together? How do we start? And in fact, the weekly 24-hour collective intelligence block party is one form of a start, but it's my challenge to the world is we need to do this ASAP. We are going down quickly with exponential planetary overheating, pandemics, destruction of the biosphere. I could go on and on. You all know the laundry list. So let's get together and do it now, especially now that we're all at home, plugged in, especially before everyone goes back to work, heaven forbid, right? And goes back to business as usual. Let's get the most out of this moment and manifest collective superintelligence now. That's my challenge to the world.
So that's a good challenge. Personally, I'm interested in the detailed technical questions of how we do that. And also detailed, because decentralized parties, peer-to-peer parties, various forms of gathering, collaborative writing platforms, video conferencing. These things have been around for a long time. There's been lots and lots of experiments, and they've nearly all failed. So what I want to bring us towards, or what I want to explore, is partly why have they failed previously, and what are we offering, apart from it's definitely the right time. So I agree with Jamin there. The context and the time now is an amazing opportunity to do something like this at scale. We might be financially fucked, but the need is so present and so obvious to everyone now that we've got an opportunity. So that's what I want to explore. From my point of view, I'll just say one thing, because I know other people are going to add something to that I'm also interested in. There are two aspects that I'm interested in that I think we need to explore. We need to do great storytelling. So to bring people along, we really need to bring like artists, storytellers, and we need to communicate emotionally and directly and simply where we're going, right? And we need to use that in the co-design process. And that leads me to the second thing. It's not just about getting together and the tools and the talk. We need to address the problems of evolving fast enough with the conversation. And that evolving is not easy, and that needs structure and diversity. It needs those two elements. Okay, so who else? Alex.
Yeah, I want to go after you. So first I want to really thank you. I am so happy that I joined. So I didn't know that such a, how to say, relevant. I think it's like it's a universe sending it because this is exactly what I was exploring recently, and I actually just found Radish maybe like 10 minutes before you introduced yourself. I started to yeah, so basically founded this as well. Yeah, so it's very good. So I just realized it's I don't know, David, how dare you not telling me before that this is very close to what we're working for. So
Bad storytelling. I'm sorry.
bad storytelling, it's for sure. So, but now we have Jemen, so who seems to be a very good storyteller. So yeah, and in technology, I think, like from my perspective, like what hinders from unlocking collective intelligence is basically use case, like first use case, first best possible use case which can be tested and can show efficiency. Because I think the only thing which is collective intelligence is for making decisions. So we just need to find where like this collective intelligence can start helping making decisions rather soon, and basically showcase the system, any kind of technical system we can work for together. So we have some developments already, and I'm pretty sure like many people have. We just need to collaborate, find the best possible use case, and find a way to get the necessary stakeholders to test it.
Okay, I've got a question for you. And by the way, if I talk too much, please speak up and tell me to shut up. I'm really happy if you do that, right? But my questions to you, Alex, is, okay, questions are fine, but you must have in mind a couple of thoughts of a really good use case, and if you could share those. And secondly, you haven't explored what the kind of problem zone, what is this thing which, that in this conversation, if you learnt about or if you explored, would kind of like maybe help get there for you?
Yeah, so problems is yeah, there's so many. So we so many barriers, but I think yeah, besides technical implementation, which is just like work in progress, I'm pretty sure and done by many projects. I think the biggest one is to get yeah, I think I'll have to repeat myself. So I think it's to get some stakeholders for very clear use case to commit for like some continuous
And do you have any particular domains then that you think
yeah,
are good use
like,
cases?
because I know what you're trying me to bring for, because it seems to me that like science is very good domain for this because it's effectively global and there is how to say there is a very clear use case for that, and it might be a good use case for the current time with the quarantine and COVID-19. So it's also very relevant. So this is might be use case.
Okay.
Yeah, but like also like that in the climate change there could be a use case.
This is Earth Day, so it's a good theme.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, and theme for this use case. Yeah, so it's something I would explore. It's still not clear how we can get there. So what do we need for that? Like, but it's good. I'm really happy that so many people are working on this and so many people are interested. Yeah.
Garth, maybe you'd like to share.
Yeah, so I think one is, I guess maybe a question for Jamin or David. What do you see, or can you draw out or elicit the specific connection between pattern languages and collective intelligence.
Okay.
And then I think another question I have maybe for the group is when you're doing, or I guess what I'll say, operationalizing collective intelligence, how do you handle the notion of experts or expert-driven inputs vis-a-vis, I guess the opposite is, anyway, I can't frame what the word I want, but non-expert driven input.
Yeah, good question.
Can be equally valid, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, how do you manage those two, get a both and then a third, I guess, exploration would be if this collective intelligence produces better answers, and that's the theory, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. How then do you how do you connect the knowing doing gap so that you don't just come up with a superior answer, but then that answer gets put into practice?
They're fabulous questions, Garth. And I notice you've got a pen.
Oh yeah.
Could I ask you to summarize this group conversation when we go back? Would that be too much?
Now I'm wishing I didn't have a pen, but sure.
I've been making a few notes.
Yeah.
I didn't quite catch everything that Alex said, but besides that, yeah, a few notes.
Okay.
I can write. I'll paste what I have a bit before the end of the thing.
Okay, that would be great. And
yeah.
if Gareth, you do it in person, because I loved your questions, and I think that gives a really good context for the other groups. So I would really appreciate if you did that. So Osman,
Yeah.
yes, if you would like to share as well.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on, well, I have a few things that I'd like to say, but I guess I'll start by jumping in on what Garth said about the expert versus non-expert. I don't know if you're familiar with reinventing organizations. It's Frédéric Laloux's decision-making system or like way of organizing companies. It has a lot of shortcomings, but one thing that it introduced me to is to the advice process. And the idea is, how do you make decisions? Well, the idea is, instead of making hierarchically based decisions, you make for anyone can take any decision in a company or in a structure, as long as he or she consults the experts in the decision that is being done and the people who will be affected by that decision. And whoever takes the lead on the project, because leads, at least in that system, still need to exist. And there's an iterative process until both the experts and the people who are being affected come to a consensus. So it's technically a consensus-based system, but at the same time, it's extremely decentralized. So the book has a lot of cool examples of how that is being implemented. Now, yeah, so the advice process.
What's the book?
Yeah.
Is there a book?
Reinventing organizations. The book is actually kind of free online. It's like you can download it, and then a month later you receive an email asking you whether you want to pay anything for it. So that's fun. I guess my quick introduction is to why I'm interested in this. Wikipedia is the best example for me of what a collective intelligence, especially in terms of what I got out of it in my life and what I still get out of it, does. Just the idea that there is such a beautiful source of knowledge that is open, that is based on trust. My challenge is that in order to handle all of the information that a collective intelligence could create, we need to be able to handle mentally the complexity of it. So I work a lot in the field of mental complexity, personal development, and my approach is a bit different. than, I guess, a lot of personal development. But I would imagine that the collective superintelligence would also help people not reinvent the wheel when it comes to creating what the meaningful life means. And that's what I'm working on. And so because of that, I think, to this specific conversation, what I would say is centralized thinking is the biggest hindrance. That to a collective intelligence, we need to think in a decentralized way. We need to think about our local actions to paradoxically create a collective intelligence. And I think that our education has taught us not to think that way because we still have industrial paradigms, and it takes a lot to undo them, to even realize that we have them. Yeah, and that actually gets into another thing that Garth mentioned, the knowing doing gap. I think we want to create all of these beautiful models and these big, like, nice systems that would be so beautiful but they're not actually connected to what agency we can exert at a certain moment. Yeah, so that's
I
where.
guess it's my share. So we've got organizational structure there. We've got the tension between kind of decentralized knowledge and centralized expertise, and patterns in a way might be something that we can look to explore as a glue between these. And I want to ask you again, Othman, in terms of what you're struggling with, or what your question that you would like us to discuss that might help solve some issues in your exploration of this space are, what would that area be?
My area would be, where do you start? It would be in the field of how to talk about what I'm working on. How do you get people ready to take part in this transformation? Yeah, in their mind, in the way that they reflect.
Okay, so like I'll share what I've done, and maybe quite a pragmatic call. So by the way, sort of like what's it called? I have a slight vested interest because I've been working with about 2 years with Alex here on a epistemic or blockchain for science project. So I'm quite knowledgeable about his project there. And in relation to that, what here with the people that I know together with Alex are interested in doing is taking forwards a global conversation on climate change and bringing together the exact differences of communities you're talking about. So we want to bring the global community of scientists, experts, and we need metrics and we need structure around that so that we can quantify and do that in a decentralized way. That's where the blockchain, the epistemic blockchain comes in. We also want to bring together citizens, and our call to that is to involve the Wikimedia community. So coming up in January, it is the 20th anniversary of the first edit on Wikipedia, and we want to invite all the Wikipedian editors to work on climate change together with scientists, and these are different domains, they're kind of in the middle. And finally, we want to bring together activists, citizens, ordinary people in that conversation who have on-the-ground knowledge of situations or what have you. I think this is, my God, that was a bit too quick. I've done it a bit too long there.
And is the room gonna be closed in 40 seconds?
I guess.
I guess it is. So
yeah,
let's complain at the terrible moderation when we go back into that room and say we need more time. How about that? And the key in the middle there for me is great storytelling to bring all those communities into a place, and then having a process in which these different domains of expertise, citizens on the ground knowledge, scientific experts, right, and general knowledge Wikipedians can combine their knowledge in a way that all those different parties agree and can agree despite their diverse.
Nice, we're back.
Yep.
All right.
Um,
Okay, that was cool.
Cool.
I had, yeah.
I'm going to put on a pot of coffee, so just so
No
you know,
worries.
not being, well, I may be being rude, but if I flash in and out or mute my
Will you
video,
be?
I'm still listening.
Ah,
Okay.
you're still listening. Good. Great. Great.
So I had the proposition for, I guess, federating our thinking towards something that we can, talk a bit, I guess, a bit more concretely about, and sacrificing
Okay.
everything I'm going to talk about today. And it's storytelling. So you said that great storytelling is necessary, and in my back when I was doing research on what I'm doing. One way of describing the change that I want to create in the world is people being able to recognize what stories they've built for themselves versus what stories they take from the outside, thinking that that's what they actually want to do. And I see it as the big impediment to fulfillment, is how stories, the difference between these two.
Hello.
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 Great.
So
So-
yeah, I'm wondering, how do you make storytelling something that people can use to create this collective super intelligence?
So let me add to that by saying, let's take a concrete example, as concrete as we can, talk about storytelling, and then everyone take it from their own perspectives. So let's take, picking up on what Garth said before as a question. If we've got these different knowledge domains, experts, folk knowledge, and maybe storytellers or other domains, if you like, the problem of bringing those together, the advantage of bringing them together is clear, but how could we bring those together, and what kind of story could that be? So what I wanted us to do is picture bringing these communities, if you don't mind, suggest something else if you'd rather, but let's picture bringing experts from science, mathematics, and business on climate change. Let's picture bringing activists and people on the ground together who on the street protesting and angry. And let's picture kind of decentralized groups of autonomous groups of Wikipedia editors, people who aren't really experts, they're kind of hobby experts, but they might have a niche expertise in something. And let's ask ourselves what story we can tell, but given that everyone, like Osman says, has a preconceived image of what the world is, and we want to take people forwards to something that no one's experienced before in terms of the epistemic, super intelligent future. What kind of role does storytelling have there, and what are the details that we can use to solve that problem of taking us from here to a place, let's say in a year's time, where people get it, they get the story, and they're now out of how they were thinking about before?
David, I have a really hard and really sincere question, but it's a difficult one. So in that same group of people, I think you also need to include people who either are passively not interested in that or actively hostile to that, and who may or may not have a financial or some, stronger reason than just I'm not convinced. Into that same storytelling, because that's the reality that I think we're dealing with right now.
Let's address that.
And now those kind of people in as well into your storytelling or into your collective intelligence.
And I know that I've been directly challenged on that with regard to climate change. So you have hostile economic forces, you have climate skeptics who don't believe in any of this expertise or this coming together. And in any of these situations where you try to bring together people to be active online, 80 to 90% of people traditionally are just passive. They just come and take a look and they go away. So those are two clear challenges, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good question. And since I've talked a lot, I'm not going to talk, but I've got definite things I want to say on both of those. For me, the passive people, it's the format of discussion plus super fun storytelling. So you use media, great storytelling, and you almost like challenge them. If you want to be part of this great, fun storytelling experience, you've got to step up and ask questions. You've got to be active. Otherwise, you don't get the experience. And with regard to the challenge of skeptics, kind of hackers, climate skeptics, and those people, I think, I mean, I follow like Eric Weinstein's podcast quite a bit at the moment. And I think what we can do is we can offer climate skeptics an epistemic architecture where we say, yeah, we don't trust those bloody experts and those medieval institutions either. They're all 80–90% progressives and liberals from a small demographic. We can include everyone in this, your opinion and your expertise, by using demographics to ensure that we don't have bias like we currently do in the media debate and the institutional and the academic debate. We're going to make sure we have an equal number of people on the right, people who are skeptical, ordinary people in this conversation, and we're going to give you a fair platform to challenge your views. And please step forward. Have you got a problem with that? Because we're talking your language. Those are my two answers there, but any case.
Thanks. Yeah.
Who else has got? So we're imagining this situation of bringing these communities together, and we've got some challenges and questions of how to get there. Jamin.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Great conversation. So I have a story to tell, if I've understood the challenge correctly, about how to bring these different communities together. And the short answer in one word is in conversation. A longer answer would be a network of conversations where the rule is simply that everyone goes to whatever conversation they want. There is radical inclusivity within reason, I'll say. You know, we don't want group, you know, if a group decides, if someone chooses to form a conversation and cap it at 10 people, that's their choice, and, you know, let that be respected. Why not, right? You could always boycott such conversations if you wish. And likewise, in terms of what is the framing of the conversation, right? You know, do we want this to be a free-for-all food fight between skeptics and non-skeptics? Or is the framing, look, this is for people who are beyond the skeptic stage and are convinced that we've got a serious and urgent crisis on our hands, and we need to search for radical solutions, and this conversation is about radical solutions. That's just an example, right? Skeptics could equally well form and frame a conversation. This is for skeptics only. We are on a mission to debunk this whole climate change, you know, Chinese hoax, right, et cetera. So basically, let a gazillion flowers bloom, let anyone form and frame and bound any conversation that they wish, or not. I mean, you know, open hallway water cooler discussions welcome. I mean, you know, basically anything goes, just be clear on what you're framing, and let that be the context for this new network. We have an acronym for it, a social network of actual conversations, where we actually get together and are willing to challenge our assumptions and talk with each other and meet each other halfway and have a conversation. That's what I call an actual conversation, versus a lot of what you see going around social media right now, which what I would call, you know, poisonous mini darts. That's not a conversation. You know, this isn't middle school where someone's passing a note under somebody else's door saying, well, I think Lisa's I think she's nasty. Yeah, what is this, middle school? Right? So a social network of actual conversations. The acronym is SNAC. And so we're at one of our projects that we're working on is actually creating SNAC Bar, a place to go to participate in actual conversations, right? Through video conference. This is the place, and that's what I mean. I mean, as opposed to just passing notes under the door via text. And by the way, I'm a big proponent of text applied in the right way, wikis, discussion forums, etc. Anyway, you get what I'm saying, and that's my story.
Yeah, having a video conversation, yeah, it does create trust. But the issue is that people who have like people, the issue, I see an issue in wanting to be right. Like a lot of people want to be right, and that just creates, it makes the conversation out. Also, Invisible Drum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
If you want to participate.
Yes, I will, because I have a lot of things coming through. So first, when you talk about collective intelligence, you talk about human collective intelligence, or you talk about other kind of intelligence. because I'm more interested about language and how actually we can go beyond the human only the human perspective of the human language. So working very much into getting into animistic ways of communication, what we do when we listen to sound or when we are in silence, no? So what kind of communication can be through silence, and then when you completely align or quiet, you know, the Dantien, the superior or the brain, no? So then is what I think is when we get into this conversation on intelligence is always this very human way of seeing that there is only the intelligence can be the knowledge can be produced by human analyzing and describing, and then we get into some kind of loop, because when we describe and when we analyze, we are actually getting away from things, because we are shorting the sorry, my English is not that good, but like just limiting the potential of something, what something can be. So actually what we are doing is just like doing some kind of negative exercise, you know, of something what can be. So then I think in the methodologies of within speculative methodologies, imagination, storytelling, you know, there is always this way of anything can happen, anything can be possible, you know, science fiction or whatever. So then I think there are the most interesting ways, which is now within the arts or theater, or, you know, this kind of performative, you know, what is also, if you look back to the history of humankind, you know, you see how performance is in a way of allowing, you know, what is the knowledge, the collective knowledge within the nature and within, and then you manifest, because a human being has the power to manifest. You know, the first magician were the cavemen. They were painting on the painting the, you know, the dinner, and then the dinner was arising, you know, when they were going to hunting. So then I think it's more like we are in humankind is in a kind of loop, mental messed up, and then we need to get more into the heart and more into the silence and sound, I think.
So I really want to speak to that, because in fact the meeting we just had at lunchtime, because we've been doing the soundscape, the sound garden for this conference. And sound for us represents spirit and the kind of thinking and highly emotional and highly kind of soulful type appreciation of these problems. And without that kind of integration of like mind, body, soul, spirit, you know, action, and and expertise, right? Without the whole integration, you get dangerous power structures. So if you get super intelligence, right, and the ability to act, but no heart, no purpose, no mission, that's a dangerous one. Or if you get any of the other two, it's super dangerous. And interestingly, there was also a really lovely podcast about 3 days ago by Radiolab that started off with physics and Richard Feynman's cataclysmic question. He said, what sentence would you pass on if the whole society got wiped out, and he wanted to pass as much knowledge to the future alien species or survivors? And he came up with basically the atomic hypothesis, and it was very super scientific. And half the podcast was about that, and it kind of felt like it was okay, yeah, that's physics, nuclear. And the second half, they asked the same question, but they asked it to musicians. And they asked the same question to, and that was also just really profound. They had this primordial chord. They talked about not passing on information and silence, because anything you would say to people would skew them into some sort of weird cultish religion, and it would really screw up their minds and their society as they were learning. And it was a lovely way of saying that we do need so much more than just experts and people having their say in there. We've got to include storytelling, emotions, and practice to give people space, which I don't do very well.
Yeah, listen. I think is the listening. We have to explore more how to listen. We have to learn how to listen.
I agree 100%.
I think that's it.
What that reminds me of is the idea of compassion. And I think the discussion about seeing things as skeptics versus believers in climate change, I think it should be on the sidelines, because it automatically creates a separation. And compassion, especially in a humble, non-judgmental form, is connecting emotionally to the other person, which I've felt quite a few times in different Zoom conversations that I've had in the past month. And so yeah, we've been focused in this little group on like, what can we do? How can we change things? But yeah, I think Invisible Drum, like you're touching on the heart of the issue, which is like us not being connected to our hearts, and therefore seeking to blame the other person, blame the system, blame this and that. You're unmuted, David.
Talking about listening, Alex hasn't spoken very much, and I want to bring him in. I also want to compare and contrast. One of the problems of listening and heart and being compassionate is it becomes very fraught or difficult to do that when you have to take action decisively and quite fast. So, for instance, it's no way to run an army, right? You know, and let's say if you see a severe and imminent threat like climate change, and you need to make decisions at scale, and you know you're not going to bring everyone on board, and you know there's going to be conflict from, let's say, the oil industry and other people. You need to address those conflicts and you need to take action. And that was an earlier question that Garth put. How do we connect these conversations, this emergent, evolving collective intelligence, to action? And going back on what I said about listening, I'd like to listen to Alex for a bit, because Alex is from Minsk and he's a strange culture. So I'd like him to speak.
Okay, yeah. And actually, I also wanted to touch base about coming from like this to doing, like based on insights gained from collective intelligence. And one thing is, I think, which is important, is formalization. So basically, if you have some kind of decision suggested by collective intelligence, it has to be formalized in a way which can be actionable, and in order to yeah, and I'm not going to be talking a lot about storytelling, because I'm not an expert in this, as David already suggested. So yeah, and
but the tension between the heart and the listening and the storytelling and the art, which Invisible Drum brought up, and your perspective of formalizing and what have you, is like, it's the dialogue between those things. How would you bring those two things together? If what we're saying is we need the heart, the storytelling, citizens involved, them believing and seeing, and yet we need the structure. And these two types of people, these two types of within us, have such a hard time talking to each other and respecting each other.
Yeah, so I'm a very rational person, so that's why, like, from my perspective, I will need some story which will make me think that yes, this is something which might work. So this is like this is my perspective. And like what you told, like about like filtering by demographics any kind of formalized decision or like formalized metric is a good for me. It's a like it's hard to argue why it will be like not how to say, why it will not be universal for any kind of person. So you basically have a final formalized metric, and you filter it by the group you trust. The group, like, is it Republicans, Democrats, whoever, and you see the difference. If there is a difference from a compound formalized metric with a metric formalized from kind of a filtered group you trust to. So
can I put a question to Invisible Drum here? So the opposite question is, let's say we want to take action together and it's about climate change, and there is a big pot of money to invest in some change. We've got raised a lot of money, and some people are going to get it, some people aren't going to get it, and there's controversy. And yet you want people from your perspective, how would you make that decision about action, where to spend the money, taking your perspective on that?
Well, I think as just going back to the formalistic, I think the form is already the content. So if you have to present a project that is some kind of a design, you have to design a system, or design a system that works, design a system that speaks a language. So basically, I think once you can still be listening, and then have this more hard approach, but at the same time also take actions and then propose interesting projects, and projects that I think you need to integrate both. You need to have you need to have a good team, a good team that can present both. But I will approach to design, presenting some a design of a project and a system that will work, and approaching to different languages. I don't know if you understand what I mean. I don't know, I mean, it's when it comes about money and about reason and about this more kind of I think that the world what we live, and the laws and the way we achieve things, and then we need to break these systems within the systems, and then we had to get inside the system to break them. And then for that, of course, you need to use the same languages, but strategically. So I think for me, I'm more proposing more like invisible places. I'm more proposing parallel realities or parallel systems. So you construct your own network and system, and then naturally you kind of start to connect these invisible places or invisible networks that are like a self-organism, and then parallel to the state or the system that is imposed. So I try to don't resist the system, because by resisting the system, you're giving the power to it. So how to create new systems, but then of course, I don't know how. It's a very difficult question, David.
Okay,
for me.
Cool. And just to sort of point to order here, someone's going to need to summarize, and I suggest we take someone else. And Osman, do you want to summarize when we go back to the space?
Yeah, I'm done. I wrote quite a few notes.
Okay, but not in text, in speech.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But yeah, I can. Yeah, it's. I mean, Invisible Drum. You're synthesizing a lot of stuff that it's really matter for more reflection. I think, at least for me. Because yeah, like if we resist the systems, And it's a weird balance, resisting the system and creating the new one at the same time that then gets integrated. Yeah.
Is it all right if we go back to Garth's questions a bit there? So what were the initial questions that you asked? You talked about bringing these different knowledge communities together and...
How do you connect the knowing-doing gap? And how do you handle the notion of
that's what we're kind of talking about now. So for me, the knowing-doing gap relates to the kind of formal systems that Alex is talking about, because you need budgets, you need accounts, you need maths. That's kind of where the governance and the blockchain stuff comes in. Jamin.
Yeah, just to comment on that, I think Invisible Drum, great to have you here. I think you hit the nail on the head with this invisible network that's parallel to the current institutions, financial, government, et cetera. And I think as we build out this open source, decentralized network of actual conversations where people can come together, much as we're coming together today, that the best ideas will emerge. And for those best ideas, the best implementation plans will emerge. And these will be fostered by this open source collective superintelligence, which will far surpass any other forms of collective intelligence, be they government, academia, private sector, nonprofit sector, you name it. And so the best ideas will be emergent, and those can be diffused through memes, through stories. Ultimately, there is a new story for humanity that is beckoning to be born, which is about us coming together, manifesting not just our collective superintelligence, but our collective power, collective spirit, et cetera. You get where I'm going with this. That's the pathway, I believe.
Can I be skeptical for a minute? Because emergent collective superintelligence has been kind of talked about for a long, long time. I mean, the Celts and all the kind of organic conversational storytelling tribes didn't really stand a chance against hierarchical power in forms of the Romans. Sometimes when you have big business like Google, when you have governments, you have hierarchical power structures. If you want to make quick decisions, if you look at what happened to Occupy, if you look at what happens to the left frequently when it's fragmented and emergent, it just gets decimated by a simply mathematically well-organized, well-structured machine. So why, Jamin, or anyone else in this room, do you think that this hippie ideal of emergent, nice conversation with touchy-feely things has any chance of doing better than the current system? So that's
I highly recommend you read Reinventing Organizations for this question. I just want to say,
yeah. Oh, no, I know. I'm playing a part here, so I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys send your email so I can send you the text or write the email in the chat, so I can send you the text of the.
Everyone will want it. So have you? It's in the chat. Yeah. I mean, share it with the whole group.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. But if we get outside of the chat, it's gonna get away. So I can send you an email with it.
So I challenged everyone with the skeptical question.
Yeah.
Collective intelligence sucks because it's not properly organized. Put it that way. Let's say that's the skeptical question.
Yeah, I think the Invisible Drum's points of design and teams and like having an emergent leadership, we lack that. And I think that's what creates the superiority of hierarchical systems. And self-organization also is lacking.
So you're saying the middle ground, this organizational element, Invisible Drum, sorry.
I just wanted to add something because, okay, I was talking about the design, but what about the body? As I think the body is the superior technology, and then we've been, by our senses, connect cognitively. We don't have access, to what the body can do. Okay, how the body can really have control of itself, because actually it's to have control and conscience of our own thoughts. But if our thoughts are colonialized and our thoughts exist micro-fascism and micro-sexism within myself, you know, so then how that has been imposed through generations and generations. So I think the most important is the education and how we can find an emancipation, you know, of the body, you know. So for just liberate, you know, the body to fight any system that comes to impose something, you know. I don't know if I explain myself very well, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
I feel very clear in understanding what you're saying, but I still feel, if I'm in my bones, that you're not respecting enough in your approach the impact of direct power and military power, business power on that spirit. And that spirit does not stand a chance, historically speaking at least, in the face of organized power. So I would like a more direct answer from your perspective to that. Why do you think that what you're saying now will work when it didn't work for the Celts, it didn't work in history, it didn't work for the Native Americans? Why do you think?
Well, because I just have to keep hope, because I'm not living in the Celts. I'm living in 2020. So then there is another time, and there is another kind of DNA, you know, and another kind of evolutionary time that we are living. So the only thing I have is hope, you know, hope too. Yeah, hope and action, of course,
Okay.
because hope is action.
And definitely we can't get anywhere without hope, and no great change in the face of a big transformation has ever really occurred without it looking hopeless when it started.
I mean, the idea of hope is like, if you look at hope theory, which is a psychological theory of hope, what it tells you is that hope is a very specific, like, it's not just feeling that things could happen, but feeling that you have the agency to do things, which includes knowing what pathways you can get there, having the confidence that you can generate new pathways if that doesn't happen. And I think we have the internet now. That's what separates us from the Celts. We can create these things.
Google will save us. Google and Facebook.
No, but Wikipedia maybe.
Yeah, maybe we're being
we can create like invisible networks.
yes.
Other networks. Yeah. Okay, we have to come back or something like that. I mean, I have a window. Yeah.
We'll get back, I guess, in 18 seconds. I guess, yeah.
And you're going to summarize, yeah?
Yeah, I can, and I will send you the what I've written. I guess, yeah, we'll see. The collective intelligence will get created by itself, I think, in the end.